It's 9 o'clock. This is the subcommittee for dispatch. We call this meeting today not so much to get public input as to get, really have the subcommittee members get together to decide how they want to present to the delegation next week and how we're going to present to the delegation, and if we're really ready to present anything solid to the delegation. Syndi White isn't here. I don't know if she's coming. She didn't indicate to me one way or another if she was going to make this meeting, but I think it's a contentious issue. I think a lot of people have different ideas of which direction we should go. I know how I feel, and I'm not sure exactly how Representative Tyson or Representative Wright or Representative White feel about how they want to go forward as far as this committee to the delegation. It's next week. Is that correct, right? So I'd ask that we have some conversation between us, and if we have questions, we hope that maybe you guys can help us. But as far as public input, I think we really want to keep it be amongst ourselves so that we can get something done. Yes? No?
I think Glenn can speak if he wants to.
Well, I don't, you know.
I'm here to listen.
You're here to listen. Okay. I'm not trying to keep the public out. I'm just trying to get business done. And I've found in the past that when we have a lot of public input, we don't seem to get anything done amongst us. So I'd like to hopefully come to a consensus of how we should proceed next week. And I was going to try to do this on my laptop so that I could type something up and then email it to all of you, but it's not cooperating with me. So I'll just take some notes. You all have a copy of the minutes of the last meeting. Are there any questions or any concerns about anything that's on here?
One tiny typo.
Sure.
Second page, 1, 2, 3, 4 bullets down, I think. I think you want to say other towns rely on the sheriff.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Not that I think that's a huge
Oh, but
problem or mistake.
it's incorrect, so
Yeah.
that's not a problem.
Right.
All right. So with that said, is everything else okay? Do you have a motion to accept the minutes?
I'll move to accept the minutes.
I'll second. Any more discussion?
No.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. There's Sydney, good. Sorry, Sydney, we kind of started without you. So, where to begin? I guess my first question would be to my committee members. Is this something that we want to go forward with, or are we wasting our time?
May I kind of sidestep that for
Sure.
a moment? So my understanding is that we are going to come up with a recommendation for the delegation, and then the delegation will be making the decision.
Correct.
Okay, so my feeling is that when I first got on this committee, I knew absolutely nothing about dispatch, and I did take a tour, which was fascinating, and I wish I had retained a lot more than I did, but I'm better informed. But I think that no matter what our recommendation is, we're going to need to provide some background information for the delegation, and also provide them with the key factors that we considered when making our decision. So my suggestion is that we talk a little bit about what information we think we need to present to the delegation, and then what we think the important factors to consider are. And through that process, we'll come to our own decision, and we'll have done both at once.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
That's a good idea. So if we, dispatch runs 7 days a week, so we know that. And they dispatch for most communities in Carroll County. I don't know of any is there any town that you don't do anything for?
No.
So you, I mean, even you do a little bit for Moulton Borough, you do a little bit for Conway, and you do a little bit for Wolfboro, but not on a regular basis. It's when our dispatch is down or we don't have a dispatch.
Or assisting in a number of different ways, whether it's an officer or backup, or even ambulance services, fire services.
So I don't believe there's anyone on this committee that thinks that we don't need a sheriff's dispatch. That isn't the question. The real question is, you have 3 towns that really, basically in a full-time basis, do not use the sheriff's dispatch: Wolfboro, Conway, and Moulton Borough. So the reason we're really sitting here is for that reason only. Basically, do those towns deserve to have some type of a tax break, or do we want to go in the path of paying for a service that the other communities get? And I understand that you represent those communities that would have to pay if we did that. Syndi is from Conway, so she has an interest that way. I'm from Moulton Borough, I have an interest that way, and Ted is from Tufton Borough, and Tufton Borough obviously uses dispatch on a regular basis. So it's a good mix of all of us, and I think I'm trying to gear us to deciding. There's a lot of work that has to be put into this in the future, and there's been a lot of work that's been done already. And I think what I'm trying to wrap my hands around is, are we as a committee interested, and I know what you said, Susan, in going forward?
Okay.
Sydney?
I do think that we need to make a recommendation.
Right.
And what I would like to do, I would just like to go over what my processes have been in thinking about this, and then say where I'm coming from and what I would recommend. And then I think if we all do that, and then someone needs to make a motion, and we need to vote on the motion of our recommendation to the delegation. I think it has to come, we do have to come to some kind of a recommendation. I think that what we should do is present the issue, present the pros, the cons as presented to us, and then our recommendation with the explanation where our recommendation came from, which would be from all the things that we've gathered. So saying that, I kind of would like to go through how I was thinking so that people in the committee would understand. First of all, I looked at what the issue is. Now, the main issue is Moulton Borough came forward because they were really concerned and started this whole discussion off, correct?
Well, I think the 3 towns really got.
Well, Conway was not involved. I had to go, I asked them, how do you feel about this? And it was way back.
Oh.
So they did not start off
Okay.
involved at all. The county provides dispatch services for the sheriff's department and for the towns. That's the way it's always been. Towns can choose to opt out of this. Several towns did. There's 3 towns, like you said, that don't use it. And the towns are requesting now a base cost per town plus a fee-for-service model. That's what we heard from them. When we asked about how much that would save taxpayers, they said a prediction of an average of about $15 a year on the tax bills. And when we asked, well, what's the reason that you're doing this? And the reason that they said was equity and fairness. Moulton Borough was very clear, and they said they pay the highest percentage of taxes to the county, and they don't use the dispatch, and that's the issue. Now, once we were presented with all this data, then what are the problems that we saw? Well, the big problem was the data. The data wasn't valid. Each town measured differently. There was no set criteria, and there was no agreement, a lot of disagreement on the number and types of calls coming in. If you can't make an informed decision based on inaccurate data, is what I came up with from that entire discussion. Okay, the fee-for-service model. Several towns questioned if all the county services provided to the towns should be fee-for-service if dispatches. And some of the things that were brought up was transport, the attorneys, and the jail. I mean, that's a really valid thing to look at if we're going in terms of a fee-for-service, if we take this one step forward, then what does that mean? And then we heard from a lot of the police chiefs and some of the town administrators talking about the importance of mutual help and cooperation that we currently have. We have a lot of small towns, it's a rural county, and what does that mean if they don't all work together and they start this fee-for-services? I heard a lot about how that was going to break up the cooperation that they have now and may lead to a lot of dissension in terms of not wanting to back each other up. And I think that's a real concern. The other concern was the fact that we have a lot of small towns. Towns that will be affected in terms of a financial burden are the towns that can least afford it. And I think that, you know, as a committee, us looking only at our own town and advocating for our own town was a disservice to the county. And if we're here to really serve the county, we have to look at what's good for all the towns and not just pick and choose based on where we're from. Let's see. All right, and the one concern that, problem that I saw that came up was from the town of Ossipee, who clearly said that there would really be a problem because all the calls that come in for the county facilities, the nursing home, the jail, the courthouse, all will be charged to Ossipee. And if you're talking about fairness and equity, then there's a real problem with that. And I stated that there's no consensus on the data, which is a huge red flag. Let's see. The Sheriff's Department in several towns talked about the importance of centralization and how centralization will actually strengthen the county and county services rather than decentralization. The Sheriff's Department said that they could handle all the towns that wanted to come on. If the big towns came on, it might be only with the addition of a few staff and equipment. And then I have to think back when they're talking about saving tax money. The towns actually would save tax money by getting rid of their own dispatch and going into the county, but that was not discussed in terms of how much that would be per town, which is something for the towns to actually look at, but that wasn't brought up. So my recommendations, I really feel, something that was brought up too, a lot of times, people saying, well, you don't pay, if you look at it as like a school, you don't pay, you might not have kids in the school, you might be retired and you're not using those services, or you might choose to have your kids go to a private school, but you still need to pay the taxes. That is not a good argument because it's for the good of the whole community. And then a lot of people were saying, yeah, but it's a service the county chooses. However, it's a service the county has made the decision that that's what they provide. And it's a choice of a town to opt out. And just like with if you have a child in school and you decide you want to have the child privately placed, it's valid that you still have to support the community and pay the taxes on that. And going in that direction, my recommendation would be to keep it the way it is. It is a choice for the towns, and if the towns really are having an issue with it, and it's costing them a lot of money to have their own dispatch service, they can go with the county, who can provide, I think, an excellent service to the towns. And that would not burden all the small towns that just can't handle an increase in their taxes. So that's my recommendation, and that's my reason for that recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Well, that pretty much sums it up rather succinctly, I think. The data is just, too faulty. Mm-hmm. We need to, if we're going to do something like this, we need to sit down and analyze it for over a period of time so we can come up with some actual numbers. If we went with what they proposed tomorrow and sent out a bill to the towns, it would be way out of line.
Absolutely, I agree with you.
And that in itself would push me in a direction of wanting to study this further if it was something that we wanted to do.
Susan?
I also wrote out my thought process on this too, and it's about 2 pages long and includes a lot of the same information that Representative White just went over. And I think she hit most of the high points. And I'd be happy to share this to be used as a basis for a report to the full delegation. Needs a little bit of filling in and editing, I'm sure. but-
Sure. I mean, I agree with a lot of your points, and I understand the data was not right on, and I think Carter was very clear that the data wouldn't be right on as far as specific call to service, and I think what he was trying to do is give us a base to look at what it could look like if we were going to go in that direction. I talked to him after the meeting, and he could tell that people were concerned about all of those numbers. And we had a discussion about another route that we could take without using the Merrimack model or the other county model. And I hear you, Representative White, about, being, everything being good for the whole county. And I understand that concept that, Carroll County works together on many, 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 many things. And I think because Moulton Borough and Conway and Wolfboro pay over 50% of the county tax, we are always paying. And yes, we decided, those 3 towns decided to pull out and have their own dispatch, and that certainly is their prerogative to do that. But dispatching for other towns, we're still paying for that. Those 3 towns are still paying for all of those other towns to use the county dispatch. And I think that the people of Moulton Borough, I'm speaking for Moulton Borough, and I don't, want to sound like I'm just, but I do represent Moulton Borough. And living there for 35 years, I have seen we pay for a lot of things because of our assessed value. Yes, we have the most lake frontage, and we have a very high assessed value. We pay for a lot of things just because of that, not because we use it, but because of who we are and where we live. And I think this was just a little piece of the pie that we were looking to see some relief. We aren't looking to get rid of county dispatch. We know how important it is for the county dispatch to for the sheriffs and for all of the communities, but all we're looking for basically is fairness, and where we the 3 towns pay over the 50% of the whole county tax. I think if we could look at anything that would be fair to those 3 communities as far as the county dispatch goes, whether it be take a baseline for it costs, I'm throwing out numbers that don't quote me on them, I'm just throwing out numbers, $250,000. It takes $250,000 for the sheriffs to dispatch to the sheriffs. And, the call for service, I hear you. I heard the chiefs. No one wants to think, oh, I don't want to call, Ossipee in on this because then they're going to get charged for a call for service. I don't think that's right either. I think that's, a hard line to pull for all of the communities to sit back and go, ooh, if I call so-and-so, I'm going to be charged for that. If we could look at something like $250,000, everybody pays that. The whole county pays the $250,000 for the sheriffs to dispatch for the sheriff's department, and then of course we all pay a portion of the rest. And forget the call for service. I don't know if that would work or not. I think there's other avenues that we could look at that would be fair to everyone. And I think if you kind of looked at that concept, so the rest of the 600,000, like I said, I'm only throwing out numbers, would be divided between the communities that use the service. simple, maybe not so simple, I don't know.
Well-
So Moulton Borough, Conway, and Wolfboro would pay a portion of the $250,000, just like everybody else. I'm thinking almost, and then the $600,000, we wouldn't be a part of that because we don't use the service, and that would be divided with the towns that use the service. I know that's simple, and it's
So-
probably more convoluted than that, but.
Well, I think if you did that, then I think it leads you into the next step, which is, okay, let's talk about transportation, transport. Conway uses most of the transport from what I heard, so it would make sense then, if I'm on this line of thinking, that they would have to pay more. So if we're talking about that, then we're taking every county service and we're doing fee for service. At that point, there's no, if you look at what the purpose of county government is to serve the county, is to serve it as a whole, is not to break it out into each individual town and what they're paying to get from that county. It was just never set up that way. If we want to go down that road and set it up that way, we could.
Mhm.
But from what we heard just in terms of from the police chiefs, never mind talk about every other, part of government, that would cause an incredible problem. And I think if you start nitpicking each service and, well, you're using that much more, we never have any, need to transport from our town. Why are we paying for transport? That's a huge, you'll start looking at line items. I just think once you start doing that, it just disintegrates the whole purpose of the county government, and that's why I would really be against it.
So I think there are two levels of what you're speaking to, and one is there does appear to be a perception of unfairness in the way the costs are appropriated or divided up. And my feeling is that what I'm hearing from you is that that's because the town's assessment is so high.
Mhm.
And so I think it was brought up that the place to address that problem would be on that level rather than on the county fee level. So in other words, to take a look on the state level at how we decide who's going to pay how many taxes and how we value property, et cetera. So that's certainly a bigger issue to deal with. So it's tempting to try to make a solution here on this level, but I'm not sure it really addresses the problem. The other thing is, if there is another way of figuring a fee for each town, and if data doesn't work because it takes too many resources and is too complicated to figure out, another option is just divide it up equally among towns, but that's not fair because Little Albany doesn't have the resources that the bigger towns have.
Mhm.
And population, we can't really do it on population because then they'll be squabbling about which town has more seasonal residents and the seasonal residents, et cetera, et cetera.
Right,
So
right.
I'm not sure that I've heard a good alternative for what to base the fee on.
The other counties that do it, I don't know if they've been doing that for a long time as far as, or if it's just because of the recession and, people are looking for ways of saving money. I'm not sure what the history is on those counties that divide that service now. I don't know. Do you know, Sheriff?
I Grafton or Merrimack may be the longest running. Rockingham obviously is just coming into the picture
Right.
as far as just their capital funding for
Right.
new
New
equipment.
equipment. Mhm.
Stratford has started up for just a couple of years, I think, with their program because they have brought in new equipment and become the information hub, something like we may go to in the future, hopefully. I think you all have very good points. I do tend to agree with Representative Ticehurst that the issue is with the DRA as far as the tax in a whole, and not to try and pick apart the tax base in the county or the fees
Right.
for the county for what you get. I did want to make a comment that may be unknown. I hate to go towards this, but due to the unfortunate circumstance in Conway with the missing person report with Abigail, several towns in this county have stepped forward to provide manpower or any assistance canine. Ourselves have provided manpower, both dispatchers and officers to man phones. We are not looking for any payback whatsoever, anything. We're doing that because law enforcement as a whole in the county is a very small unit. And I think we all need to stay as tight together as we can to provide this assistance that any given day, any one of us is going to need that assistance.
I totally agree. I would hope no one would ever look at, oh, you owe me this because we
No,
did a
no.
search. I don't think there's anyone in this county that would ever think that way.
But you know what, we heard that at the last meeting. We heard one police chief say that is a potential problem. Because if you're charging fee for service, there's gonna be pressure on those police chiefs not to incur that cost to the town, especially the small towns that cannot afford it.
I have to wonder what they do in the other counties. Do the police chiefs in the other counties feel that way? I mean, they had to initiate this program at some point in time. And was it difficult for those counties to initiate, like the problems that we're having? Did they have those problems? I haven't spoken to anyone, so I really don't know. Sheriff, have you?
Again, I think, as we said in the beginning, Carroll County is very unique in its law enforcement as a whole, because the sheriff's department does a lot more than a lot of the other sheriff's departments in the state, because of the undeveloped towns without police departments, or the majority of the towns with small police departments where they need assistance. Other counties have 24-hour police departments in most of their towns. So that right there is the huge difference.
Right.
So they may not need that immediate assistance from their sheriff's department for manpower or services unless they are in a task force type of thing. So I think when you look at Carroll County, as it's been said by other chiefs, it is a unique county in its law enforcement, and I can't harp on that enough.
Yeah.
I think the rural character of this county needs to really be taken into consideration in terms of them not having, a lot of towns don't have their own police force or 24-hour police force, and they count on the county. Whereas if you're gonna look down, down in southern New Hampshire, where they have towns that are fully developed, with full departments and everything, then they're talking about county government in a different way than we are here, in terms of what is provided to the towns. And I think that's an important, when you're looking at it, which we didn't go into detail on that, but I think that's an important thing to consider, what this county has that's unique and what it needs.
Grafton County, would you consider Grafton County similar to Carroll?
Similar in a lot of ways. Their dispatch does actually dispatch for a couple towns in Vermont and co-ops. So I think when you go outside of that, then that automatically would be a fee that they should have to pay
Right.
to jump on board.
Well, let me just take another little detour. If the sheriff's department has talked about upgrading all their dispatch equipment, because you need to because everybody's doing it, and
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
like, it's-
every county in the state it's become almost at the end of its life. The consoles for dispatchers, they're not making parts for them anymore. So counties are looking at what's the best model to go to, or stay with Motorola. So Belknap has just purchased theirs, and the state is also looking into their own consoles and where they're gonna, because they're in the midst of their dispatch centers just going to Concord and somewhere up north, probably Troop F. So everybody is kind of on the same page as far as upgrading dispatches throughout the state. So as I said before, I think the county should seriously look into a capital fund for this purpose, because it, like I've thrown out the figure we have gotten, could approach $250,000. That's without looking at any type of grant at that point, though. Belknap did get a grant for, I think, at least half of theirs.
Is that in the near future, like a year from
That is in
now?
the near future, I would say, within,
So you're thinking
3 years max.
250,000 to update? So with that, I mean, we'll all pay for that, for sure.
And if the delegation decides to go forward with this, the thing that I would stress is that we're working on invalid data at this point.
Absolutely.
And that my recommendation for that, if they go forward with it, would be to come up with a set criteria of what it is they are looking at, what it is they're going to count, and take that data for a period of a year, at the end of a year, be able to assess on an equal basis so that everyone is in agreement with what they're looking at and what they're counting, and then go forward with that data in order to really see how it's going to affect the towns and really see how they would set up that kind of a structure. I don't think just saying, well, we want to do a fee-for-service, let's just try this model,
Right.
is the way to go. I think you need to do your due diligence and really research it and do it right.
I agree with you, and I think that if this committee were to give that type of a recommendation to the delegation, if that's what we would like to do, I personally think that's a good avenue to take. I hate to say, I don't want to say to the delegation, let's do it now, and then everybody votes no. I really would like to see the delegation hopefully be able to look at real data, and if it takes another year, I mean, we may not even be here next year, you know, who knows? I mean, you have to run for re-election, so we could, I don't know what kind of a job that would be for you, Sheriff, or if you could put that onus onto the towns to keep track of their data as far as how, you know, when they use it, if that's easier for you to dispatch people. If that's the way the delegation wants to go, I don't know.
Well, I think I would like to start off making a motion, and my motion would be that the subcommittee recommends not going forward based on all the information and testimony we got from all the police chiefs and town administrators. That would be my motion.
But
Vote on the motion.
if we do that motion, then it dies.
Right. Well, that would be my recommendation, and that's the motion I'm making at the subcommittee, and we could vote on that.
I'm not, I don't want it to die, but.
I would second that motion for the purpose of
Mhm.
discussion. Case.
Okay, any second? Now we can have a
Now we can
discussion.
discuss?
Yes.
May I?
Yes.
Okay, so I would, I am not able to support the overall concept of, fee for service
Okay.
at this point. But I see that it might bring value to the county in a number of different areas for us to have a better idea of who's using the services, what the services are, and just a better understanding of how the dispatch is working for us. And you never know, we may discover some ways of doing things that make everybody a lot happier and work a lot better for us and save us all kinds of money and everything else. So I think it is a good idea to study in some way, and I'm not sure whose responsibility that will, if that's another performance audit or, exactly how to go about. But I would like to see that part go forward regardless.
Okay.
So you want to amend my motion?
No, I want to just keep it as it is.
Personally, I'm not ready to kill this yet. I don't think it's a good idea. I think we can analyze this a little bit more. There's a lot of questions. All we've done is brought a question to the table, and we've, the inaccurate data, we don't know how we got to where we are today. We don't know how to compare it to other counties. For instance, I think we're just taking a little piece out of the pie and analyzing that. I mean, how is it, one of the things that I keep hearing is that Moulton Borough's disappointed because they pay a lot of the funds for the county. Well, that's because they have revenues that are much higher in the form of tax. So DRA has made that decision somehow, and we need to get them in on the conversation, whether it's, or at least understand how this decision is made. And we're not even there yet. So I would, my recommendation would be to continue this in some way, this committee or this discussion, so that we can have a real picture of what's going on. I mean, there's all kinds of possibilities and it's opening all kinds of doors, so it could be a big thing or not, but I just not ready to trash the idea, because it may lead to other things, who knows? Or it may give us a full explanation of why it is the way it is. We just don't know yet. It's very incomplete.
I appreciate that. So,
Well, I can withdraw my motion.
and your
I-
second?
And I think that someone needs to make a motion to go forward with further study.
Okay.
But one of the things that has to be in that motion is that nothing happens until, we reconvene
Absolutely.
after a
Absolutely.
year of
Yeah.
looking at what the data is. And then we have to decide what that data is we're gonna look at. Like you said, it
Right.
might not just be in terms of the calls, it might be in terms of more broader issues that whatever subcommittee handles this, wants to outline and go forth, getting the information for, because this is bringing up a lot more issues, like you said, than just the number of calls to the dispatch center.
I like that. Do you want to make a motion, or do you want to ask a question?
Sure.
Yeah,
What would my motion be? That we continue this in some form of a fact-finding.
study.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
I hate to not come up with an answer for something, right? But it's just so incomplete. I don't think it would be responsible to make a decision based on,
And the last thing that, honestly, the last thing that I know all of us do not want to do is put towns against towns. That isn't what it's about. We did that with education. That, with the donor towns, that was the most contentious thing. And believe it or not, Moulton Borough was the highest paying for education. We sent down $6 million one year, the highest. So it was another, indicator. Moulton Borough, assessed value, you pay the bundle, we paid the most. So I don't want that to be contentious with Carroll County as far as pitting one town against another. That isn't what we want to do, and I don't believe anybody wants to do that. Even though it kind of sounds like that's what we're doing, it's not. I don't believe that's where we want to go as representatives, and I think we're just looking for fairness. I think that's really the bottom line.
Well, I mean, I understand that, but on the other side of the coin, let me just try to put this into perspective a little bit.
Okay.
Do you have any idea what your revenue is in Moulton Borough?
Off the top of my head, not. I haven't
Do you
been a
know what your
selectman there for a while.
Operating costs are.
Okay, so I believe like our budget.
Right. Your
10
operating
million.
budget. 10 million.
something
And
like
how many people are in the town?
that. Full-time residents, close to 5,000.
So you're a little bit more than twice the size of Tufton Borough.
Mhm.
But your budget is 5 times what ours is. And that is a direct relationship to your revenue.
All right,
How many police officers are in town?
12, I think.
Right, we have 4.
Mhm.
So this is where the disparity is falling. You've got a lot more money. And that's what DRA is saying. You've got a lot more money coming in, you can pay more than the next guy.
Yeah, that's what they always say.
Well, it's the truth. I mean,
That's the way the system
what's your tax rate is considerably lower than others around you.
$8 and
Right.
something.
It's considerably lower
Mhm.
than other towns around you.
Mhm.
And that's all a function of that
Right.
revenue base that you've
Right.
got. So that has to be a part of the discussion somehow. And that's what, obviously, DRA has said, you get more money, so you give more money.
I know, I
But-
always get, you're a rich town, you're rich people.
Well, you are, I mean, the fact of the matter is, you've got a lot more income than we do from the, not in,
I always say,
Personal
property
income.
rich,
That's
we're
right.
property rich,
well,
if you want to put it that way.
Right.
But we're not income rich, so,
Well-
it's still coming out of people's pockets.
let's look at it this way. If that money, instead of going to the town, went to the state, and then the state doled it all out at
Like the
individual.
educational funding.
Right, based on population or something else, then you'd see a very different picture in Moultonborough. I mean, as far as the revenue that you have. So, it's all about perspective, I think,
Yes,
more than anything.
I understand that. I
And
understand.
I'm sympathetic to the idea that, you see this as inequitable, but then somebody like Albany or Tamworth they got a tremendously high tax rate because they don't have that
I
income.
understand that. I do understand that, I do understand that.
So I think Representative Wright is bringing up some things that help to explain why I am not sure I'm in favor of continuing this committee as it is. Because I think this committee was to study and see if this was a good idea, and my feeling is that it's not a good idea at this time, and I would think it would be reasonable to make that recommendation to the full delegation. But I agree with so many of the, that there are some questions about fairness, there are many different levels of things that we need to look at, and so I would feel more comfortable with recommending that we not recommend a fee-based system. However, asking for additional committees to look at some of the other issues.
I don't think we have a mandate in front of us, so, you have to look at you have to ask this question or answer this question right now. I think one thing that would be very helpful is to have the dispatch start to log, whether it's by hand or if your software. I understand. I've been involved in I've been a dispatcher on a large scale. I was in New York City, so we kept everything by hand. It was all on a tape because we didn't have computers at the time. It was 1983. So everything we kept was by hand. But for somebody to sit there and just keep a logbook, they don't have to keep track of everything at the end of the month or anything, but just write down what was the town and what was the use. I mean, it's got to be not that difficult to do.
I want to say that.
Well,
Ms. Ticehurst saw it firsthand.
Okay.
I did, and I have experience trying to talk on the phone and keep track of data and on the computer and handwrite at the same time, and I really want my dispatch people to be focusing on the call, and I hope we can find another way of getting that information.
Do they have to do it right at that second? I mean, you pay attention to your call,
No.
and it may not be 5 minutes, it may be 20 minutes later, and I know there are other calls come in.
Right,
I do understand that.
Some days you can and some days you
Yes, you
can't.
can.
And, I don't want to find that one day that it wasn't kept.
Are you
at the end of the
recording
year.
all the time?
There is recordings, all the data is put into the computer. Is it possible that we probably could pull it from the computer as far as where it came in or what it was? Again, it may be hand counting at the end of the month or something like that.
Right.
Through the data entry. But as far as every phone call in that may not get logged in or something, that would be questionable.
I know the discrepancy really is, what is a call for
So-
service? I mean, right?
That's a place to
Right,
start.
and that's
yeah.
something that
Yeah, we gotta
chiefs would have to
standardize it.
get together as far as, okay, what are we gonna count for this data purpose?
Well, maybe we could get the towns to keep track of it instead of disrupting the dispatcher. Well, I mean, these guys have to keep a log at the end of their watch, right? They write down what they did and.
No.
No.
Some towns do, some towns don't.
Know that,
Because most of it is in dispatch.
what Moultonborough found out is call for service was interesting. And you would have someone picking up the phone, calling, or you'd get a call, and it was for an accident. So one call for service would be getting the phone call. The same accident, going to the accident and dispatching would be, for the same accident, would be another call for service. I mean,
Tow truck.
one accident could be 10 or 5 calls for service. I mean, it's not just the accident. You'd think maybe just the accident was the call for service, but it's how they calculate their data on what is a call for service. So I think you don't have a uniform system for that. I mean, every department tallies it the way they want to tally it. And we found in Moulton Borough that, that was inappropriate, that they needed to go redo their call for service. And an accident was a call for service. That was one call for service. It's not the 5 other calls that were made for that accident. I think that's what they decided to do. I don't know. Yes?
I know you're not looking for public input.
Yeah.
I worked at Conway for 14 years, and what I say is every town does their call for services the way that town needs to do their call for services. And we do it the way we need to do it for our purposes. Because like you say with Moulton Borough, you did the police department one accident, but then the fire department is counted that as a call for service for them as well. I'm not sure it's a good idea to go to the towns and say we want a uniform call for services, because that might not work for I'm not saying that's what you're saying, but I think maybe what you might be trying too hard to make something work that just is already working. So I know that each town's call for services, our call for services, state police's call for services are done the way it's supposed to be done, are needed for their town, their county, their state, their budget, and their needs.
So that raises the question, even if we had accurate data, would it be meaningful? Would it be useful? Would it be effective to use that data to set the fees? I mean, because I'm thinking maybe it wouldn't. Maybe you can't really measure the value of the service or the amount of work that's being done by number of calls. Some calls are more important than others, or maybe it's the whole system working together that's more important than the number of pieces.
Then how do you base a fee for service at all?
I mean, well, Merrimack
I
does
mean,
it.
I think-
how did they do it?
I understand where you're coming from, that any additional work is gonna be problematic for somebody, but if we wanna analyze this situation, I understand you don't wanna go in this direction. So it makes it hard for me to take that and have you say, well, we can't do that. Because,
I guess, you know where I stand on this. I don't think it's worth the effort that it would take to get this data as accurate as you may need it. Because I think there's overall costs that cannot be looked at. Take this weekend with Conway. I mean, how would you sit down and fee that out?
Conway'd get a big bill.
And is that what we want to do, is what I'm trying
No.
to say?
I
But
think
that's what
there's
we
a-
would have to do under the system,
Yes.
Carol.
I mean, I think
Well,
at this point in time, in this point of our lives, I think Carroll County is just not the place to try this, in my opinion. Again, it's different than the other counties are set up. And again, I would not want to be the person to have to bill Conway or not have Conway call us for help, because they were overburdened. It's just,
And then what kind of response? Say if it was a smaller, Conway's a big town, what if it was, that happened in Albany? And then in the future, and they got this huge, huge bill, in the future, would we get the type of huge response to a situation like that if the town knew that they were gonna be so
I think
burdened with taxes?
you have emergency situations.
But
and-
everything is an emergency.
You
Well,
do, but you still.
No, there's catastrophic emergencies that towns, you have mutual aid with all these towns, I know. I mean,
Everybody has mutual aid.
Moulton Borough's gonna always
involved.
help out Sandwich. sandwich. Moltenboro is always gonna help out Tuftonboro and Tamworth if they need the help. And no, they're not gonna bill them unless, something, I don't even know why they would do that, but it's a mutual thing. So this unfortunate situation in Conway, I couldn't imagine ever saying, here's a bill for $10,000.
But you would have to, if you had a fee for service and those calls were coming in to the sheriff's department, they would be logged. They don't look, and that's why we're talking about quality and value of service, because that is not part of it. It would be fee for service, the calls would come in, they would be documented, and at the end, it would be this many calls. It wouldn't be, well, this call was this, and this call was
Well,
for this, and this call was for that.
you'd have to
It's
look
not
at
the way it
something
works.
We'd have to standardize what
Yeah.
we
Right.
think is appropriate for this particular situation as a call for service. Not rely on what the chiefs think in their own town. This is a separate issue. As far as how we're gonna address this, we need to look at it some way. There's gotta be a compromise on what
But
a
it-
call for service is.
But again, I mean, we can standardize ours, what comes
Right.
into our dispatch.
Right,
But is Moltenboro or Conway or Wakefield or Tuftonboro gonna keep that same record? No, because their systems are set up different, a little different.
right.
And what they are gonna call a accident or a documented accident is maybe two different things.
It may be easier to simplify the whole thing and say, well, this is a call from Tuftonboro and their law enforcement, period. And that's how you bill it out. I mean, unless you're gonna try to sit down and analyze how much time every call costs, that's gonna be impossible. I understand that. But if you can identify, well, Tuftonboro made this many calls this month for law enforcement support, which is basically what we're talking about. I know Carter said it's not, but you can't go to Lakes Region's mutual aid and then,
Yeah,
it's
I
just getting
understand
too
that.
far afield. It really is about law enforcement, because that's what their dispatch does,
Right.
right? Wolfboro's dispatch is for law
And fire
enforcement.
also. You have to include fire into this.
Okay,
Because if we don't dispatch the 90% of the fire departments in this county,
Mhm.
who's gonna do it?
Do they charge a fee for that?
No, they have their own association, which even the northern fire departments have chosen not to be in part of that.
Well, what was the fee that when I talked to them about
Milton
it, if we
Fire.
were gonna go in there, they said we'd have to pay like a $5,000 fee.
That would be their choice. They don't have to join the Ossipee Valley Mount Association,
I see
Mutual
what
Aid
it is,
Association.
okay.
It would highly benefit them because they get training and equipment
I see.
resources.
Mhm.
That association has provided our dispatch with tens of thousands of dollars for equipment in our dispatch, because we do that for them. So, again, if you start playing with that funding or monies, in the end, the county may lose out, because Ossipee Valley may say, well, we're paying for it anyways, now you want us to pay more, so we may just do our own Lakes region and develop their own dispatch. Possible.
The other side of this coin that hasn't been discussed is maybe, well, not maybe, you could look at this and say, well, Moltenboro and Wolfboro and Conway need to use the county dispatch because they're paying for it. I mean, it was an option that you took, and.
Are you kidding?
Yeah, I know, that's what I'm saying.
I mean, Conway outright said they're not changing,
They're not
no matter
Right.
what, which is fine.
But it is a
again,
choice
their
right now. And I think that's something to consider. They're not
Right.
boxed into this. It's a choice.
It is a choice, I understand that. The three towns understand that. And I think we said, if we all came into your department, if we all decided to disband our dispatch and come into your department, you would have to hire additional people to do that. And you would grow, because it's, common sense would say, you would have to grow to handle those calls. To what degree, I guess that's, something that, you could think about, or but do I believe Moltenborough is gonna change what they're doing? I don't believe they would opt out to do that. Conway says no, and I don't believe, and Wolfborough's administrator they're not interested in opting out and coming into Carroll County either, so, I don't think that's, an issue per se. And I know it's voluntary, and I don't think, I gotta fight for my town, I have to do that, so, yeah, I understand everything that everyone's saying. I'm gonna hold my ground just because I feel I need to do that, and whatever you guys decide, it's majority rules, so. If we make the motion here not to pursue it any longer, then that's what happens. If we make the motion to continue to study, then that's what happens. So I think that's what we have to do as far as this subcommittee goes, is make the recommendation to the delegation. Yes, we're gonna, study further, because we don't have the data to go on any further as far as right now goes, or we don't feel it's something that can go any further, and we don't want to disrupt, Carroll County any further. So.
We're in trouble because there's 4 of us.
I know. How did that happen?
Yeah, I just don't think we're not making an informed decision.
Right. I agree with you there. I totally agree that we don't have enough information and data to make an appropriate recommendation to the full delegation. It's a lot more convoluted than we ever thought.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot to it.
Yeah, there is a lot to it. So, are we going to ask the delegation to allow us to work further, or are we just going to stop it here, I guess?
I think you had a motion on the floor.
I think.
I'm not sure I could.
That was
did.
to continue this
You-
study.
yeah,
It never got seconded.
Okay.
Well, no, I did, I
Oh, you did,
seconded
okay.
it. Because Representative White withdrew her motion,
Right.
and Major second,
And-
so,
And he made the recommendations to study it.
to keep going, right. So that was a motion. Should we vote on that and maybe call it a day? I vote
Well,
yes.
If we vote, all right, because we could always make another
So
motion.
the motion
can.
is
So the-
to continue to study.
And
In some capacity, yeah.
But not to go forward with the request to go to a fee for service.
At this time.
I can't honestly say that without
Yeah.
being fully informed of its ramifications.
So is the motion is just to go?
It's to study this further. I mean, of course, that's how I get into this discussion. So we need to analyze that and come up with something that we can
And
We can agree on.
we'll do the best we can to provide you that information. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm not here to, say, no, we're gonna do it our way and that's it. We'll do what we can. I mean, in the end, the county's gonna get the money they need to run this
Right.
budget.
That's right.
Absolutely.
I'm sure of. So,
Yeah.
I mean, again, we'll do the best we can to get that data that you may need or come up with that you want.
So, just for discussion, just to be clear when I vote, what I'm intending to do is I am going to vote against continuing to study, not because, because I'm going to vote to against continuing to study because I would like to narrow the focus or make the focus of what we study more specific, and because I think we have enough information about the overall issues to not change to a fee service. I think I made it more confusing
You did.
than clear. I'm sorry, I'll just vote.
I think you voted no.
I see. So what, can I just clarify?
Sure.
You feel that we shouldn't, at this point, do a fee for service because of everything that we've been presented to us?
Because of the overall issues, yes.
And not
And-
continue study, not
And not
continue to
continue
look
study,
at it.
because I agree with that. And I agree with that. Whether we need more study or not, I'm still,
This is basically about the philosophy of whether we should charge a fee for service
Right.
or not. Or look into it.
right.
to
That's
clarify,
exactly.
so what I believe Ted is saying with his motion, okay, so we go along, is he doesn't want it to die right here. That really is the bottom line, yes?
Yeah, I
We
just
need
don't
to
think we
look at
can make a
more
decision
information.
for or against without having clear understanding of what the issue is, how we got to where we are, and what it all means.
And I guess from what Susan was saying, she was saying if we do further study, it needs to be really clarified what it is that we're studying. So what are you saying?
We can do
you
that.
we
I think
should-
we're on the same page there. I just want to continue the discussion. If we say, no, we don't recommend a fee for service, we're making an opinion that it's not a valid point. And I think we need to take some time, focus on what those issues are. Sit down and outline what we're gonna study and how we're gonna look at this, and then move forward. But I'm not ready to cut the discussion off.
So I think we're agreeing on everything except the process for how to do it, or
Sure.
yeah, so that's okay.
Should we break it
Yeah.
down into two things? Because I'm hearing two things. The first would be, the first motion would be not to do a fee for service, recommend a fee for service at this time. That would be the first one to vote on. The second one would be to vote on a study, to study the issue, and then we'd have to really think about what are those things we are going to recommend that they study, because we're going into a delegation that hasn't been part of this process,
Mhm.
and I think they need to hear what those things are that we feel need to be studied.
Right.
So could we break it into two motions?
Sure.
Right.
So I'll retract my motion, yeah.
Oy.
And we can
Yeah, because it
start
makes
with,
more sense, otherwise it's too muddied, 'cause-
um,
So you,
So we're back to the motion to not recommend a fee for
Basically.
service.
I don't know why you have to divide it in two, because I think one could, in the end, lead to the other. I mean, depending on what happens in the study, it could be a fee for service if things worked out. So
Right.
I'm not interested in cutting that
No.
aspect off. I just think if you have the one motion to continue the study and not drop it right here, that you can, and don't even mention the fee for service at this point in time, just to continue on with the study. Who knows what the end result might be? It might be do nothing.
Right.
But I don't want to, I'm
We
not
don't
interested
know.
in narrowing it
I just think
to
that we need
point.
to be specific in, I think the delegation was looking for a recommendation.
But
And I
we-
think that we need, part of our recommendation needs to actually say, we are not recommending a fee for service at this time. I don't know why we can't say that.
But we can
as
say,
part of it.
at this time, we can say that. We can say that.
The issue needs further.
So the issue needs further study. Let me try to, this committee recommends at this time not to go for fee for service because the data is inaccurate. We would like to continue studying for maybe the next year, possibilities, because we feel that there's some, merit to it, to the conversation or to the subject.
Can we put that in one sentence?
I don't know. Can you?
Well, I would,
Make the motion. We retracted the other motion. So if you make the motion, or, let me try it. I'd like to make a motion that we do not go forward with fee for service at this point in time, but would like to continue the study of dispatch for Carroll County and their services, and receive more data and more information, and bring it back to the delegation in a year. Yes, no, maybe, somewhat?
yeah, I think that kind of,
I'm getting your point in, and your point as
Trying to
far
figure out how I'm
as
gonna write this
fee for
down.
service, but not killing the whole idea at this point in time.
yeah. That would be my,
Okay.
That would be my,
so I guess I'm gonna go along with that, I'll second that.
okay.
And so for discussion, I think that pretty well sums up and takes in the different points of view. Now, I'm just gonna ask the question. We have a lot of people who put a lot of time into this, you have to take a whole day off work and
Sure.
all that. So what specifically do we hope to accomplish that's gonna be worth a year of everybody's time and effort?
I think what's fairness to everyone.
Yeah, but
So
specifically,
are-
what are we looking at?
Are we going to look at alternative ways of splitting up the cost? Are we gonna look at, what data that illuminates what we're actually doing now? I'm not
I mean,
100% sure.
I'd break it down, I'd like to know what the history is, how this got to the situation as it is. And then, how the actual money is broken out in services, so that we analyze that data, that's the data that we're talking about. And then we can look at what we're gonna recommend for the future.
You know, I have a question in terms of start looking at the fee-for-service and how services are broken out. Is dispatch to towns the only optional thing that we have here? Because I'm thinking in terms of, and I'd like to ask Sheriff that, in terms of his department. Are there any other, like, is transport optional?
Transports are optional. County has always done it, just because we have people going north and south. And courts kind of adopted that, the orders say sheriff's on them. Like you heard from the Wakefield chief, he picks up most of his prisoners, because he's coming to this court anyways, and brings them over from the jail.
Do a lot of towns do that? If they're.
The towns that are right here
Mhm.
do that. Conway is the one town, Jackson, Bartlett, because they would have to come down to the jail and go back to the northern court
Right.
with the prisoner, and then bring them back down.
I gotcha.
So you could see that, that's an officer tied up for a day,
Hmm.
transport. So is it feasible for them to do it? No. We usually have someone going north. Sometimes we do have to make special trips to and from the court for that.
But I can
But that's
easily see a
part of
town
it.
saying, if Conway is the
Right.
town doing it, why are we paying for it when we do it ourselves? So, and that's why I think we're opening the door to a mess.
Potentially, I see that happening, yes. I'm a Conway taxpayer. I know what my county tax is. I may see 2 cent savings on this whole thing if it goes through in this type of fashion that's already been presented, which you've obviously come up with is unfair at this point. So if I save 2 cents, is it worth me as a taxpayer knowing the whole intricacies of this whole thing? No, it's not, to throw this wrench into this whole system that is working at this point. And if Molten Borough calls up tomorrow and says, hey, we need a prisoner
Mhm.
here in this court, we're there, no questions asked.
Right, I understand that.
And I just, again, for the really, to some, it is a lot of money, but I think it's, again, I think we have to fall back on the DRA.
DRA.
That's where the problem lies for the town of Molten Borough and Wolfboro.
They're, you won't get a lot out of DRA. Well,
Unfortunately, that's kind of the way our system is
Yeah.
set up.
okay, so what are we gonna do? Let's finish this up. Do we still have the motion on the floor?
Right,
Yeah,
you made a motion.
I did, and you seconded
And I
it.
seconded it. So,
Let's call the vote.
Any further discussion?
The more we discuss it, the worse.
The worse it
gets.
gets.
know.
All right.
So the motion is to not move forward at this time with a fee-based service, but to continue to study it, correct?
Correct.
Basically, yeah. That is the motion. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, wow. Remember.
I mean, I think these things have to, these are all things,
Yeah,
I think once everything is on the table, and we actually see what the county does,
true.
we might come to the conclusion that, wow, we do so much that you don't even realize for
Mhm.
all the different towns. To pull out each individual
Right.
thing and start saying we're gonna do a fee would create a big mess, and I
Yeah,
think
I mean, I don't
that's what
think
it'll
that's,
highlight.
yeah,
for
I don't
people.
think, that's what the intention of,
Part of that analysis has to be, what is this gonna do for other issues as well?
so it's almost like a performance audit.
Yeah.
Yeah, to see what it is, because I think a lot of people don't realize, I know I did not realize half the things
Mhm.
that are done in this county, just by your department alone. And I think that would really help for the whole public to understand, and then to understand the costs involved in it, and how that would affect going to a fee-for-service system.
Maybe it'll be another committee, not us.
Yeah.
So that was my question too. Do we know who's on the committee that reviews the sheriff's department budget? It's
It's us.
you, just you two? or-
No.
No.
and
Syndi.
The three of you,
Mhm.
okay.
Is it just the
And
three of us?
Jean,
I think
and Jean.
Jean.
Jean
Yeah.
is too,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because it is nice that there's that overlap. I would hate
Right.
to have a separate committee studying this part of it and
Right.
from that part of it.
Right.
So
Do
we
we have a
have,
motion to
That's
adjourn?
it.
we have no
Yes,
need
that's
to
our motion.
set another meeting, correct?
No, because we have a delegation meeting
Next
next
week.
Monday. So I had a motion to adjourn this little meeting at 10:14.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I gotta figure out what my
I
computer's
stole your
doing.
pen.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Everybody signed, right?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to get your letter, I'm just trying to get my thing. I'm exhausted.
I know. There's just so much in
Well,
this
that's a
thing.
sign of a good committee,
Yeah, I
that
think
people
we
are
did a good
really
job.
thinking
Sure.
and trying to be fair
Right,
and trying
right.
to understand the
And it's,
implications.
you know,
Well,
I
there are
hope
my
you
pens and
understand,
searches.
it's not that